if there's one thing like we know Council does well, he knows how to put these position players in the best position to succeed. Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner Patrick Mooney. We're your Cubs beat writers over at The Athletic. Patrick, free agency has started. There are players signing with teams. The Cubs aren't yet active, but I think pitchers are going to move. We're going to see some stuff happen over the next couple of weeks. Maybe not the biggest names. We'll see when Juan Soto signs, who is not going to the Cubs. But we can talk about some pitchers, right? Like we've talked a lot about. We talked last episode about Roki Sasaki. The Cubs are going to be in, quote unquote, in on that. We'll see what that means. How long when that process starts. How long that process goes. But something that you heard while we were in San Antonio and then was kind of reiterated in Jeff Passan's latest piece on ESPN is that the Cubs are going to be kind of on that middle tier of pitchers, starting pitchers. So Corbin Burns, cross him off your list, but then start talking below that and you start to get, okay, are they interested in Max Fried? That may be getting out of their price range. That's something we kind of heard early on at the GM meetings, that how expensive is Max Fried going to be? But there are other names. This is a pretty solid free agent class, and there are names that the Cubs are going to come away with one of these guys that I think can push, at minimum, push Jameson Taillon down or compete with Jameson Taillon as a solid middle rotation guy with some upside.
Yeah, I just came here for the intelligent spending talk. I think, what we gathered at the GM meetings is that, the Cubs are not going to be in on Burns. I still think Fried makes a lot of sense and he has a lot of the attributes they'd be looking for. But look, if a lot of teams, big market teams with playoff ambitions, are in on him and willing to stretch, we don't have a great level of confidence that the Cubs are going to go all out, right, to sign a guy like that. And at the same time, we've written this even in season. Cubs are pretty good at those upper middle class free agents. I know you hear like kind of mid-tier, and Cubs fans will probably roll their eyes, and that is totally understandable. But Cubs have been good here with Imanaga, with Taillon, even Marcus Stroman. There was a lot going on there, but he, for a time, looked like someone who could start the All-Star game, right? Like they have like a good sense of what they're looking for here. They have a lot of confidence in their infrastructure. And again, as a fan, you could say, I'm sick of the Cubs trying to coach guys up. Why don't you just go get a star? But within the reality that they're working in, I think there are a lot of names on there that makes sense and could really help push this team towards the next level.
Yeah, one name that was mentioned to me in San Antonio, and then we see pop up in both names mentioned in Jeff Passan's article were actually mentioned or came up in conversation while I was in San Antonio. I'm not sure if you heard the same, but Nick Pivetta was a name that I heard, and instantly what someone said was like, go look at his Stuff Plus. And that's become a very trendy thing, and the reality is teams have their own models, right, that show like what the stuff is like. I don't know how close what the Cubs have internally shares with the Stuff Plus that pops up on Fangraphs, but Pivetta was nasty last year, in particular his slider. Like his fastball has always been like measured well on those models, the Stuff Plus models. But his slider seemed to like leap and was just absolutely amazing. Good curveball, like everything. He was a stuff plus monster, is what I believe I was told. You know, he has a, but he had a what's it called? He got a qualifying offer. Is my hesitance there? And you know, we had a lot of fans complaining when Jed and Carter said they were over the threshold, right? The luxury tax threshold. This is where the complaints become valid, because suddenly everything changes when you talk about qualifying offers, because I think those draft picks go up significantly. I should have researched this before jumping into the topic, but that's it goes up to like from like a losing a you know, one of your first round pick, like goes up from losing like your third round pick to like your second pick or something like that. We should double check that, but it's a significant hit.
Well, I mean, we all know that pitcher wins and losses are the most important stat ever. And to me, it would be so classic for the Cubs to sign a guy who got a qualifying offer who went 6-12 last year and has a 4.76 career ERA. I mean, I understand to a certain point. I go back to what Tommy Sahadev told us at the end of the season of asking, like, what do the Cubs look for in free agent starters? And he went right to, like, you know, walk strikeout rates, and Nick Pivetta was elite in that category. I mean, 88th percentile, 80th percentile, like, and I think his kind of late career development would speak well to another point that Tommy made of we want guys who can get better, guys who have a strong sense of routine, some of that intangible value. To me, though, I mean, Pivetta feels like a guy, you know, you sign a year or two ago. This, I mean, to extend to that level in terms of all the qualifying offer, draft pick, international bonus pool penalties. Clearly, if he declines it, he thinks he's going to get a really nice contract in a really robust market for his services. I don't have my own IV model, but that would raise a lot of red flags to me. However, I don't think it was just about this one guy, right? I mean, another name I think Jeff mentioned was Kikuchi. Makes a lot of sense, especially given the way he performed in Houston after leaving Toronto. I'm sure the Cubs are looking at a lot of these guys in terms of how they could unlock that potential and kind of put them in the best position to succeed. And they have a lot of credibility in that space, no doubt.
Yeah, and just to go back to the qualifying offer. So it goes from your second pick and $500,000 to your second and fifth $500,000 international bonus pool. That is to your second and fifth pick, second and fifth highest selection, and $1 million from your international bonus pool. So the draft pick compensation isn't as bad as I thought it was. I thought it was a bigger bump. I thought it went from like third pick to second pick and a fifth pick. So it's just adding a fifth pick and another 500,000 from your bonus pool. You know, if they're not getting Roki Sasaki is losing $1 million from your bonus pool and a fifth rounder for a pitcher that you may be high on that you think can be really strong. What does that do for you? Kikuchi is interesting. What was brought up to me was like more research needs to be done, and why is this suddenly happening? Is like his success with Houston seemed to that was pretty damn impressive and was really his best stretch of his career. Pretty high strikeout rate. Walks have been good for the past 2 years now, where he's not walking guys. I think what stood out in Toronto was he had the peripherals and wasn't getting the results as much. That's something I kept hearing before than after the trade. Looks like the slider usage went up after the trade. Houston's obviously got a good history of taking guys with stuff and tweaking how they use everything. I think he's a fascinating. I think he'd be a fascinating pitcher to acquire. I don't have this in front of me, but I'm pretty sure Toronto has a bad defense. That would definitely not be an issue with the Cubs.
Right.
If he's striking guys out even close to a 30% rate, which did like he was at 31.8 with Houston. That's easily the highest he's done, but that was over 10 starts. I'm not sure if he can replicate that, but if he's even what he was with Toronto, which was 26, and the walk rate, like that's what the Cubs are looking for, right? He's gone. Let's see, he's gone 170, almost around 170 the past 2 innings. Like this is the type of guy they're looking for. I think the only question is do you want like 3 lefties with Jordan Wicks being like your 6th starter in this scenario, making that a 4th? I don't know if that matters as much if you're just getting outs, right? Like I think I feel like that was Counsel in spring training, right? Like Counsel was kind of like, I think someone was bringing that up because there was Shota, Steele, and then Jordan Wicks competing. And Counsel was just like, I think you're overthinking this. It's like I'm not that worried about it. If they're different types of pitchers, that just get me outs, get me through 5 innings, and we'll figure this out. I think those are 2 really interesting names. I think Kikuchi obviously doesn't come with the qualifying offer. He's a little older though. I would still I still think Nathan Eovaldi is really interesting.
Yes.
He's much older than both. Well, maybe not much older than Kikuchi, but I want to say he's 35. But that's right up the Cubs' alley when it comes to like a 2-year deal or something. He's going to get like 2 years, 45 or something like that, or 2 years, maybe even 50. That's just sounds like it just sounds like exactly what Jed wants to do. Yeah. Not getting bogged down by too many years. He'll pay the higher AAV. I think those three names, Eovaldi, Pivetta, and Kikuchi, when it comes to the middle tier, upper middle tier, as Passan has this listed, I think that makes sense. The short-term names, I think, also make sense. I'm very curious to see what Walker Buehler ends up getting. Obviously, the Cubs have gone to the Dodger bounce back well before. I'd be interested to see if that's someone they can try and get that would be interested in working with the Cubs. I just wonder if they want more certainty, a little more certainty, a higher floor, because obviously Buehler on a 1-year deal, he could turn into the ace of the staff. Like he could emerge as the one. Do they want someone that maybe they'd want him to be the second signing and push Assad out of the rotation essentially to start the season if this were the path they were going? I don't know. Would have to talk to more people and understand their exact thinking, but I think they want certainty with who they sign. And Buehler, as much as I like him, I think it does kind of there's not as much of a floor there, or there's a lower floor there. All right, Patrick, let's come back and talk about catching. We will be right back after this quick break.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is Storyworth.
Here's how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, Storyworth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by Storyworth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With Storyworth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
All right, Patrick. One of the names we mentioned for a backstop for the Cubs, Travis d'Arnaud, has already signed. Not a crazy deal. 2 years, I believe, $12 million. The Braves did not pick up a 1 year, $8 million option.
Right.
He's able to get more guaranteed at a lower AAV. Going to an Angels team that came into this offseason with a clear message that they're going to try and spend and bring in players to try and win next year. It's an interesting signing in that Logan O'Hoppy's one of those, supposedly one of those 130 start catchers, and d'Arnaud's more of a timeshare catcher or very top tier backup catcher. So I think that's interesting, but it's not like he's been working beside pretty good catchers for a while now. I feel like and handled multiple types of roles as a backup or timeshare catcher. But cross his name off the list of potential catchers that the Cubs are going to pursue.
Yeah, and I'd imagine this gives some clarity or shapes the market a bit. I'd imagine the Cubs would be didn't need 2 years on d'Arnaud given his age. He's also from Southern California, so I'd imagine that has some sort of appeal. But this is kind of the bucket they're looking at, right? Of a guy who could play anywhere from 75 to 100 games, depending on the scenario. I mean, probably they'd like it more like a 50-50 split with Miguel Amaya, as well as a chance to rotate those guys maybe into a DH spot as needed, because they just want more of a balance. We've talked about this a lot. I'd imagine we'll continue talking about it. The good catchers are really hard to find. And coming out of the GM meetings, we got a no doubt enthusiastic endorsement of Moises Ballesteros as a hitter. There's some encouraging signs about the possibility of him getting some playing time as a major league catcher, but I don't think the Cubs are looking at their future lineups as Moises can catch whatever 100-something games for them. It would be more of an option as part of a rotation. So from here, there are similar guys. I think the Danny Jansen's of the world, the Carson Kellys who are out there. I think we'd be shocked if they didn't sign someone of that caliber before we head down to Mesa.
Yeah, Carson Kelly seems like a very safe bet, right? If you're going to sign a timeshare backup guy, he seems very stable. Danny Jansen actually would be a pretty solid platoon partner if what Miguel Amaya did last year is kind of who he is, right? Because Miguel Amaya struggled against lefties. He was terrible against lefties and league average against righties. Danny Jansen crushes lefties and is okay, a little below average against righties. Not I just looked this up. Amaya had a 30 weighted runs created plus against righties. Against lefties. That's abysmal.
Yeah.
and Danny Jansen was at 111. So that's kind of a pretty good platoon guy. He's 81 against righties, so it could be a timeshare, the right type of righty. I'm sure if I dig deeper, you can find the right type of pitches he hits and type of righties he hits. Doesn't strike out, takes his walks. I think Jansen and Carson Kelly make a lot of sense, and that's probably the route they go. There is that small chance that they go and get a prospect, right? There's still that chance. I just don't know. That's how you get the star, right? You just said it. Moises Ballesteros it's a long shot that he's the catcher of the future, right? I think it's really you never completely rule it out because catching development's weird, but I don't think we've really talked to anyone that's like, yep, he can do it. We definitely believe he's going to do it or anything like that. Not that the work ethic isn't there. It's just like physically it may not be realistic. Like the body type and everything just doesn't. There's not much. I was reading a scouting report on him. I want to say Baseball America had their top 10 out, and like every description, it was like he doesn't block balls well, he doesn't frame well, he doesn't throw guys out. And I'm like, wait a second.
Other than that, he's a perfectly capable defensive catcher.
Like, come on, there's got to be one thing here. So yeah, that's a pretty pessimistic view there. I would like to. I'm always curious to see if someone's going to trade. If someone has a blocked catching prospect, that's how you get it. That's how you get that catcher of the future. The Cubs have so much prospect depth and players that could make sense. Moving Nico Horner, who we discussed, Cody Bellinger, who we've touched on, like those. I don't know if that's enough to get you that prospect. Cody Bellinger probably isn't going to get you a lot just because that's just how that contract is working. I don't see that unless someone's looking to like desperately get a center fielder. But I think that's the only way you get impact, and that would be down the line, not 2025 impact. You know what I mean? So it's going to be. I think the reality they face is what we've been saying kind of since the season ended. And I think that's okay. Get that half. Get that timeshare. Maximize. If there's one thing like we know Council does well, we know Council does a lot of things well, right? But one thing that I appreciate about him is he knows how to put these position players in the best position to succeed, right? He doesn't want to expose guys. He does, there's a method to why he's doing certain things. As much as people might complain about Michael Busch being pinch hit for against the lefties, he's trying to do something. There's something he believes works, and he's trying to put them in the best position to succeed.
I love this because I'm picturing like your basement or your garage, just a total like minor league catching prospects room of like all the scouting reports and depth charts taped up against the wall, all the headshots of these catching prospects. I love how you've been on this. I think it's a great idea. Probably hard to pull off, like you said. And I do think I can also envision us at Cubs convention, during those group interviews or the Q&A sessions with fans of kind of Jen Carter and Council up there saying, look, we got, this quasi starting sort of more than a backup catcher. That's going to raise the floor of our offense next year. And Cubs fans not feeling it. The media sort of rolling their eyes, but
85 wins, baby.
Raising the floor. Like this is our big offensive improvement, sort of crossing our fingers that Bellinger's healthy and like an MVP, having a better catching setup, and maybe some sort of young guy popping, a full season of kind of good PCA, a less than full season of Miguel Amaya not being part of like the worst catching setup in the game. Those are kind of the things we're looking at here.
All right, Patrick. Kyle Hendricks signed a major league deal with the Los Angeles Angels. He will likely start the season in their rotation. Guaranteed deal. Like I wasn't sure if this was going to drag out for him. I wasn't sure if he was going to, be a spring training type signing on a minor league deal, an NRI type thing. This is, it's not a huge deal. I believe. Do you remember the money? Was it 2.5?
Something like that. Yeah.
That right?
Yeah.
So nothing crazy, but a veteran winner going to a team that we talked about before with Darno. They're trying to win next year. They're trying to make these marginal improvements. I think this is kind of a best case scenario all around. Kyle kind of goes home in a sense, like he's from that area.
Mhm.
Am I? And then
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Sorry, I
And
was like,
his
all of a sudden, I
dad
was like,
had
wait,
his
did I?
dad had worked in the Angels ticket office for a bit when he was
Oh, I
growing
didn't
up.
even know that
I
one.
think he also had a couple connections to uh, some of the angel, great Angels players of yesterday. Just between his family connections, where he grew up, all that stuff. So no, you're right on with that.
Okay, yeah, no. For some reason, I started to like hesitate. I was like, wait a second. I know he went to school in the East Coast, but did he?
Yeah.
He wasn't from there. I like the way this ended, Cubs wise. It was
Yeah.
like the only good story of 2024. Such a disappointing season where fans were wanted more, maybe shouldn't have expected more, but did expect more. And just it was, a boring season with a team that lacked a lot of like excitement. And that start from Kyle Hendricks was just like a really nice way. Glad it happened near the end of the season. Glad it was the way Kyle Hendricks went out. A great outing. Um, and just like what he deserved. He was taken off. He was pulled after 7 1/3. He didn't give up any runs. Like what a just. I mean, a perfect story for him. Yeah, was the wind blowing in like 100 miles per hour? Sure, but I mean that like if anything, that's the baseball gods making sure Kyle Hendricks gets a good send off.
Yeah, and I think the Cubs very much recognize that. Even Kyle himself acknowledged he probably should have been released at some point during the season, and almost certainly would have if some of these younger pitchers had stayed healthy. I mean, bringing him back and having that sort of like countdown again of are they going to have to release him? That's just an awkwardness and uncomfortable situation that the Cubs wanted to avoid. Kyle is maybe the most self-aware player in the history of Major League Baseball. Certainly,
Amazing.
I think Jed Hoyer would agree with that general sentiment. And Kyle, and looking around, I mean, he had told me towards the end of the season, like he would have signed a minor league deal if he had to. Like that's how badly he wanted to pitch. He was not too proud to go compete for a spot. So when a very attractive location comes early with a guaranteed deal, as well as like the chance to sort of work through whatever this was. Maybe this was just kind of the natural decline for a guy who's absolutely maximized his major league career. But if he feels like he's working on stuff and has more to offer, you didn't want to sign with a team that expects to win the World Series next year, or a team where you'd constantly be looking over your shoulder. I think there was only a small group of teams that really made sense for Kyle. And so like, why wait? Why drag this out all winter? Why wonder if that opportunity will still be there as it gets closer to spring training? This is a guy who's always read the room very well, and he jumped on it.
Yeah, self-aware is such a great way to describe him. I mean, the fact that he brought up during the season, like how thankful he was that he was getting this chance, or that he didn't really even. He's like,
Deserve
maybe
it.
I don't even deserve this chance. Like you don't hear big league players talk like
No.
that. It's just, I mean, and he was right. Like I mean, in May and June, we're talking about like, is this the end? Does he need to be released? And it felt uncomfortable because it's someone that you don't want to have to say those things about, but that's reality, and he's openly talking about it. I mean, to wrap it up, he was just such a pleasure to cover in Chicago. We won't get someone like him again. You know what I mean? Someone that unassuming, and then hits the heights that he hit. Like the third place in Cy Young voting in 2016. Pitching multiple clinching games, starting multiple clinching games, huge games in the postseason. That Game 6 against the Dodgers is one of those outings that where they face the minimum with all those double plays. Just one of those games that's going to be hard to forget for anyone that watched or covered it or was a part of it. he's a Cubs legend. Like I'm not sure if you watch this, era of Cubs baseball, he has to be among your top players when it comes to both performance and just easy to root for. Just an easy guy to root for. Glad he gets to go back somewhere close to home and somewhere where he'll get a real shot, and we'll see if the Angels can make some noise. I don't know how tough that AL West will be, but maybe he has a shot to get in the postseason again. That would be fun.
Or
sorry, go ahead.
Maybe he pitches really well and the Cubs have to trade for him at the deadline next year. I'll throw that. How about we throw that one out there? Because you're right. Yeah. It's very well put of, are we ever going to see someone like him ever again? And I don't think you'd get that mixture of a guy who throws like 87 miles an hour. We'd have to wait another century to find games with as much emotional heaviness as the ones that he started. And the fact that he never changed at all during this time is just unbelievable. We're talking World Series hangover, the fame getting to his head. I mean, this is a guy who's, made about $90 million in his career. Like, none of that has changed his demeanor, his temperament, his sense of purpose and routine. Just like a kind of a once in a lifetime player to cover or watch as a fan.
Yeah, just a pleasure to be around. Glad I got to cover him. Still, my favorite story that I wrote was the Kyle Hendricks story at The Athletic that opened up the playoffs right before his first start of the 2016 postseason. Just fun to cover and fun to dig into his rise as a pitcher. All right, Patrick, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for listening. This is Northside Territory. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hopefully, we'll be up there with video of our beautiful faces in the next couple episodes here. We're working on that. We'll make sure you guys get to see how we look when we're recording these podcasts. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for reading our work. Make sure to subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I are covering the Cubs all off season long. Thanks, everyone. Take care.